Well, it's day after Christmas. Hope everybody out there had a good holiday. A lot of good eats and oh, probably, hopefully rested up and get out a little bit today. I thought, you know what, this would be a good time to talk about the year in review. What heck happened? Well, you know, when we got last year when we started out, and I'm going to talk on a national level a little bit. The big news, of course, was Israel got attacked, and it was heartbreaking. But I want to, when I look at it, and this is only my opinion, okay? But we have a nation over there, and they don't believe in citizens having weapons for any reason, really, no protection or anything like that. They figure that on a national level they can protect their citizens. And what they found out was they can't. And they actually didn't. They fell flat on their face. And the result was a war in the Middle East over there. Now, there was a couple thousand people in southern Israel there that they have what they call a safe room. That's their protection. And, modern day weaponry will allow you to knock down just about any door or wall. There's no real stopping the weapons out there. And their neighbor there along the Gaza Strip, the Hamas, is their enemy that says they're going to do whatever it takes to eliminate the Jewish nation, period. And they'll keep doing it as long as one of them is alive. Now the attack, most people say, well, it was the Hamas. But in fact, there was some Palestinians involved in that attack as well. It wasn't just Hamas. And Hamas has been in charge of that country a lot of years. And history is not real good since they took over. And the rockets came raining down on Israel on a regular basis. And the world has watched this fester and boil for a long time. The unfortunate circumstance was, right off the bat, when a couple thousand citizens got slaughtered. And if you think that's too harsh a remark, it is not. Babies' throats were cut. People were burned alive in their safe rooms. People that went to a concert were slaughtered. Guns were shot across the field as people ran. It was nothing more than target practice for them. Like the Old West, they drive their motorcycles across there shooting as they go. They run their prey down, grab them, and they took a lot of hostages back to trade in negotiations over the next however long it takes. And in fact, that's one of the biggest problems over there, is there's some hostages, including U.S. citizens, that are somewhere hid over there in the Gaza Strip. Now, the United States was arming Hamas, although they claim they didn't know it, but they were warned about it ahead of time that they actually were with their help, and that part of the group that was in charge of the help coming from NATO was in fact part of the group that actually physically was involved in the attack on that little southern province of Israel. The victims, the women, some of them were raped in front of their husbands or boyfriends and then killed along with their boyfriends afterwards. Most people say, well, that couldn't have happened, but it did. There's proof. I don't know if really how you can stop that kind of stuff from going on when we hide from it. But it does. And it's going on and on and on. And the other thing is that we seem to get involved just enough to let it go on, fester and run and run and run, instead of financially putting a stop to it from all ends. Now, everybody knows that Iran is financing Hamas. And so it's not too hard to figure out where the head of the snake is. And like I say, we get involved, but we don't try to make a winner. We just try to play both sides at once, and we know how that works. Doesn't work out very well. So there we have a open war with no end. And in fact, it's spread to the north. The Houthis now are involved in the northern part. In Syria. You know, it never stops. Well, anyway, that's what happened at the start of our year this year. And the other one that's been ongoing, of course, is Russia. And Russia attacked that country next to them, Ukraine. And we give them enough to just barely form a defense, but not to protect. And so as we make plenty of weaponry and send it to at the start of that little skirmish, we bought oil from Russia because we decided to stop advancing our own oil. So we started buying right away off from them. So we bought a lot off from them and then financed Ukraine to fight them. I didn't make sense out of that, but hey, listen, I'm not in charge. I'm just giving you what I've seen out there on the world thing. There again, you can't fight a war without weapons and finances. And if NATO was really serious, there would have been two sides that would run out of weapons and money very quickly, and they wouldn't be painting the ground red over there, knocking buildings down. There's a big reactor over there that could poison the entire world. Yet I guess it's okay. You know, I mean, when it comes down to, when it gets real bad and one country or the other says, well, we're going under, I can see that the nuclear warfare could happen. Those plants could go down and spread their poison throughout the world. New bombs could be released and then re-released on them from other opposing countries. Now, whether that's going to stop or not, but the frugal way to do it is to stop all finances going to either country. That would stop them in their tracks. They couldn't go any further. But then, who am I? I'm just looking at it from the outside in. And it isn't a matter of parties. I'm just telling you right now. It's the countries involved, our country and the entire NATO nation, that has allowed all these skirmishes to go on. You know, everybody has their bone to pick. And there's ways to really stop it if we would want to. And I don't know if they keep them going because of ego or if it's greed. I'm assuming it's both. Now, let's look back. Let's look at our own internal issues, right? We had two parties that can't get along and haven't got along since who knows when. And it's been progressively worse throughout the Obama situation going through. And I was highly disappointed back when, you see, I was all for getting insurance that was affordable for everybody in the United States, and that we could tame the medical bracket because it was running wild. And in fact, most facilities that supply medical are owned now by corporations. And when they run across competition, they buy their competition out. And of course, prices go up and they exceed inflation and they exceed what increase in wages are. And how do I know that? Well, I keep track of all the numbers for my wife and I on our costs of medications and of the separate medications and the insurance costs. And, you know, this last year, we got a 2.5% COLA investment or increase. And Along with it, my private insurance policy and Medicare both went up. Medicare went up substantially by percentages, much more than what the COLA that we were getting back. Now I know it don't seem fair, but that's the way it is. And that's in a country that's probably one of the richest in the whole world, or was. We're sliding quickly as we dole out money to everybody but each other. I know I'm telling you the down parts, and I'm going to get around to the good parts because I'd rather leave you with a good taste in your mouth rather than a bad taste. That's why I'm doing the bad things first. But you and I, we voted in what we thought were people that was representing our best wishes. And they have not. And they're not going to. Not until there's some sort of a voting revolt. And to do that, we need to use our head and realize it is not the party. It is the man. The people we voted in are working against us, and they can't get along with each other when they sit down in those chairs, and their fat butts get fatter when they're sitting there arguing with each other and not making any sense whatsoever. And they get behind closed doors and they won't let you know what's going in the budget, even though that budget may cover something for the next 10 years, which is really unfair. Now, I know you have to have plans to cover at least the next 5 years so that you can plan for it financially. Their idea financially is what percentage can we raise each one of these. See, because pretty soon you end up 100% of the money rolling back into the federal government, and that will be the end of the control. They would have control of you. And in fact, they do. They tax us, they get money in there, and then they built this National Board for Education, and they dole out monies and policy. So we pay it into there so that they can pay it back to our local schools. But you see, when we paid it into them, there were no strings. There was no, you have to do it this way. Nuh-uh, none of that. It goes into their pocket, not the personal each person, but the pocket of the government. And they sat back there and they say, what's the best thing we can do for them in the schools? And so then they go out and enforce it, but they give a little bit of money out. Say, per student, per day, this is what you get. Oh, by the way, we have all these different programs, and we would like you to put this in your classroom. And so the local school says, no, we're not going to do that. And so then the federal money stops. You either do it their way or you don't get the money. And it doesn't matter how many of you guys paid taxes into the federal pocket to be sent back out to your schools. It's gone. Now, on the way there, we pay a middleman to collect the taxes to put it back into this account, Board of Education. I'm just giving you this one account, none of the rest of them. So while they're there in their think tanks telling us what's best for us, our kids got dumbed down over the last few years. You know, we had COVID come along, pandemic. And then inflation. I mean, it was one thing after another. So there's, on this money, before it gets back to the schools, another middleman has to grab that money to hand it back out, along with all these forms, and you have to hire somebody that knows how to fill out government forms, because in your Board of Education, they don't have anybody smart enough to fill out the forms. It has to be somebody that knows how to work the program. Special people. And they draw pretty good salaries. Reason being, there's no real salary there. So it's not limited by you and me about maximum salary that can be paid out. No, somebody makes that decision in our state government or within that county that the school resides in. And the guy comes along and says, well, I can get you $150,000, but you're going to have to give me $60,000. And over the next couple of months, he fills out the forms, gets it in, and sends it in, and gets you the grant. Here comes the grant, along with a piece of paper with the strings attached. It says you have to comply with, and all these things, and inspections. And before you know it, you got somebody there you're handling another person that might be a CPA, so that they can tell where every penny went, and they count the pennies, so that they can come back and find you if you miss it. Oh, yeah, that's the way it works. I know you're getting mad at me now because I'm being a pessimist, aren't I? I'm just telling you that's the way government works on it. Last year, some of our people, citizens like you and I, out in the state of Washington were considered terrorists because they disagreed with the Board of Education about how their students were being taught and how the things that were going on. And in fact, it went all the way to the White House and the letters were sent back, told them how to write it so they could activate it. And I said, no, we don't do that. And in fact, the Oversight Committee of Congress found the proof that said, yeah, you have, in a short period of time, you had over 175 of these people that were terrorists. They're nothing more than parents, people like you and I. We went to a board meeting, and we did not like what they had on the agenda and argued about it. And the name goes in there and says, well, you're a terrorist now. Because they were tried, they were considered under the Terrorist Act, okay? Because of 9/11, way back, a law that was written to protect us now is used on us. That's your government at work. Now, I'm not anti-government. I'm just anti-laws that seem to be railroading us into a society that is called a socialist society where the government does all the thinking for you. You know, when I was in the service, and gladly went in, but part of being in the service was that somebody told me when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat, and when to shit. And what job I was going to have when I was there, and how I was going to perform it. Excuse me. Okay, now, in a socialist society, the same thing comes along. Right now, we have free travel, but if it ever gets into a socialist society, it'll be back to like it was during the pandemic when you couldn't cross the country. There was no place to stop and go to the bathroom. You were told to stay home into your house. Many people that didn't got fined. You couldn't attend church. It was against the law. But we have separation of church and government, don't we? Well, we did. Not no more. That was proven during the pandemic. Most of those people would tell you, our Lord will protect us, and we didn't need the government intervention. And in fact, some of the societies out there say that it's that way today. They teach their own children. They refuse medical acceptance of any kind, especially blood transfusions. And it's okay. But it wasn't okay for our nation to do the whole thing, and all of a sudden they're trying out on us what would happen if the martial law was enacted. And in fact, during the pandemic, they didn't call it martial law, but that's pretty much what it was. The only difference was you didn't have somebody knocking on the door with an AR-15 across their shoulder. Well, I mean, that's just one of the things. And I give you an idea about how the taxes work, about control. And yeah, I'm worried about it. All right, so let's get past that now. Let's go on to something more local, okay? Well, because I'm retired, I spend a lot of time on here, right? And I look out and I say, wow. People in towns, some of them, they get in these big ruckuses. And in fact, you know, I followed Otter Creek for a little while. And they actually have a neighbor dispute that is now in federal courts. And we, the people around there, said, oh man, look at all that drama. I need to get involved in some way. Me too. I got my hand up. I got involved. And you say, well, look at here. The one is the squeaky wheel gets oil, right? Squeaky wheel gets oil? Okay. So as it turned out, the man with the money makes the rules because that's the golden rule. The man with the gold makes the rules. So the neighbor that had the most also had the most influence. and got his side out to a lot of people. And when the other side tried to fight back, they were in fact accused of what that person was doing. So now you got two people pointing at each other. They don't like each other. And who could blame them? Well, one side was making money off this thing because of this thing. This right here. Wobbles? Yeah. This thing can make you a lot of money if you play it right, and if you know how to do the video editing, and if you're pretty good as far as talking about things. And if you don't mind doing a little bit of what I call brainwashing, it does go against most people's grain, by the way, to do things like that, but it happens a lot. In fact, the last company I worked for, and this is a story I'm going to tell you, a true story, okay? Tried to do a little brainwashing. Now, the last company that I worked for was construction, and I was on the site, the construction superintendent. And what I did is I handled on-site contracts and the subcontractors. We had very few men that actually worked for us. It was companies that worked for us. And so we would have this little office trailer out there on the job site, and we would check progress on a daily basis and make phone calls to get people in there and coordinate whatever it was, and then feed everything back into a computer like this and do our thing. Well, you have what they call kind of like a monthly get-together on here on the net. They owned their own little setup, and no matter where we were at in the country, we could get on the computer, and for that half hour to an hour get-together, we would be on here looking at the corporate, and the corporate could click into us at any time. We could have a one-on-one or a one on maybe 50 or 60 people, depending on who was in control. And we had to look at a book called The Toyota Way. And I don't know if you guys have ever read this book, but the Japanese wrote it, and in their preface, they actually insinuate how dumb the American people are, and actually use those words. I looked at that, and I chuckled, and I called the president of the company I was in, because there's several companies within this company. You know, it's not just one company. It's a very large, nationwide, and actually it goes into other countries to work as well. And he had a chuckle too, and he said, "Well, we don't have a choice." He said, "The guy that writes my paycheck, and I write your paycheck. You have to do what I say, and I have to do what he says." Okay. I said, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So I went through the book, and I could see that this guy that was writing about the Toyota Way, he actually had moved from his house into the factory. And this was in Japan, and he was in charge, you know, like a general manager over all the things in the field. And so his family comes secondary to the company, and they were trying to preach that fact that your family would be secondary. In other words, everything that you were doing was going to be towards working in the Toyota factory. And, you know, they had a heck of a reputation for turning out a quality automobile, and they were very proud of it. And the Japanese have a way of, when they tackle something, they do an excellent job. There's no question about it. But it's not our way. We're a free country, and we don't do things quite in that way. We have a different mindset that allows us freedom of speech and thinking. And we've always been taught family first. And religion and state are two separate items. And the religion is ours, it doesn't belong to the government. We can believe as we wish, okay? Well, anyway, that's not the Toyota way. And when something goes wrong, they take the blame for it. I mean, literally, the physical blame, they get distraught. Some actually are gone. I'm talking about not on this earth. As I read through this thing, and their references to us was so downgrading because we were too lazy to do it like the Japanese were doing it. Too lazy, us Americans. Now, they wrote this for the Americans to read, and they were insulting us every chance they got throughout this book. They showed the difference between Japanese and American. And the book wasn't very thick. It was about an inch thick. And, you know, it was 8 inches by 6, I suppose, something like that, you know. Well, it didn't take me long to get through there. And each quarter we had to spend a certain amount of time on it, or actually each month. And they called on me and asked me what I thought about it while I was on here. And all these people in the company were watching, right? So I pulled out all these phrases, and I said them verbally over there. And before I got completely to the end, I was stopped. Yep. They didn't like what I had to say. And I didn't say anything particularly negative. I just pointed out these things about how the Japanese felt about the American public. I didn't say anything negative about the book itself. I just wanted the people in there to understand what they were reading, because it's a way to brainwash people. Now, my boss called me later on it, and they would never call me again while this thing was being discussed. I was not allowed to express my opinion about this book. Now, I read it, right from front to back. I hated that book because it was a downgrading thing for me personally, because I didn't feel the way that book did. I didn't figure our people were so lazy we couldn't accomplish the task that the Japanese do, because I knew what happened during World War II about how our factories were up and running. And in fact, in most of them, the women ran the factories while the men were out fighting, and it showed what America could do. A family unit with freedoms that was able to turn out more than any country in the world. We won the war not because of the amount of men. We won it because we could supply the equipment. And the women in our families were the ones that were the workers out there that supplied that equipment so that the men could get out there and fight the war. It didn't come to our shores, at least not enough so that you would know it. It was somewhere else. So it shows you what can happen and how things can look and what happens with brainwashing. You can become a slave to the factory or to whoever's in charge at the time. And a socialist regime can do that to you. Well, getting back to that little town. The way to get somebody on your side is you get on here and you talk over and over and over, and you talk over anybody that's out there. And you try to keep ahead of the game if you can to explain it before they get there to tell you their end of the story. So you make a mountain out of a molehill. You throw money at it. You ask for money. Now, the poor ones that came into this fight, they come in there unarmed, if you will, although they'll tell you that they had weapons. This is so squirreled because, you know, you're talking maybe apples on one hand and bananas on the other. You know, they're not really relative other than consider them a fruitless dessert or something out there. But in other words, this other person doesn't have anything to really fight back, but they're going to fight with everything they can. They're going to kick, scratch, name, spit, whatever it takes. The other one can sit back and say, people are going to do it for me. I'm just going to tell them how, and gets on there and does a very good job on it, and sits back in the chair and just very good speaker gets it out there. And it's rhetoric. I would say that in Guyana, it happened there. Yeah, Jones's minions listened to every word and hung on whatever he had to say. And in fact, they all kind of faded away, didn't they? When he did, they did. That's more on, like, I consider like a local level, even though it's not my local area. But it could happen here. It could happen anywhere. And when this thing started growing, then people like I got involved. And right away, it was, you're following on the shirt tails of somebody. No, not really. Were you making money on it? No, I don't make a penny on it. You're just an old fart trying to get in there. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, I have a lot of experience. I dealt with people like that all the time. In business, it was just, you have to know, and they're not opponents, but you have to know who you're working with. And when I say working with, you have no choice. You're working to make money, and the money, the amount you make, is how well you get along with your, if you want to call them opponents, that's fine. I mean, I've been in board meetings where your best client was considered a fool. Now, in my book, they weren't fools. They were something that you took care of, and you tried to glean that thing, that correspondence with them, so that they relied on you more and more. You didn't look at them as a foolish thing that you can just pick anytime you want, pick their monies. Those corporations usually don't hold up as well, and they only go so far, and then they kind of fail. They fade away on the vane, you could say. Well, this thing didn't fade away. This thing out there in Otter Creek just kept on growing. And it is, I'd say right now it's about as festered as it can be. It's almost as if the overwhelming effect on it is a point of no return. And I don't know if it will or not. In this last year that I've watched it, you know what the good thing I seen on that last year? Let's dismiss all that crap where the attacks were going on. A couple of months back, and maybe more than a couple of months, but anyway, I had made a conscious decision that I didn't want to be known, look, there goes that chair again, for always being on the attack of somebody. I wanted to know what can I do to just help. You know, I had to make a choice. Did I want to stand by and burn the field down, destroy all the wheat out there because there was a few bad grains out there? And the answer is obviously no. I didn't want to be known for that. And in fact, I looked at what can I do to just help with this? And the more I read, and I did, I read a lot about it, and also about the people involved. And at the time, I wasn't happy with either side as far as what I felt about them personally. Because I thought I wouldn't want either one of them as neighbors. Now, that was only an opinion. Because I didn't know them really that much. I only knew what I saw as what they were sowing. But as I got closer to the meat of the subject, I seen where one was relentless in attack. And if there was ever a fair tactic, it wasn't used within their attack. And other people started joining in, and birds of a feather, what they are, they seem to think of in the same way, similar to what I did. But when I looked at the other side, I said, oh, these people can't fight back. They're using every resource they can to stand up, and they're barely keeping it going. And I didn't know if they were going to exist to this point of the year, because I thought surely they're going to fail. And I listened to some of the things that they said, and I thought, oh, wow, they can get pretty nasty. But then, no miracles. But I said, I wonder what would happen if I was walking in Michelle's shoes, if I was walking in John's shoes. And last of all, what would I feel if I was wearing Harley shoes? So let's go down there. Well, Michelle is just a little bit of a thing, probably around 5 foot, if that, and 85 to 95 pounds, maybe. And for her size, she's as strong as an ox. I've seen her move some stuff around. And she's got grit. She's standing up to a giant. And she's daring him to do something. I'm telling you what, this girl, this woman, she's a lot younger than I am. But anyway, I can see her standing in the field up to this guy and reaching up and slapping him. She would fight until she could not fight anymore. That's the kind of grit she had. That's why she was lasting. And I'm thinking, wow. Well, what about John? Well, John, he acted as a protector, and he was the one that was doing the heavy lifting around there. He seemed to be able to live with this woman that could yell and scream and probably could jump up and slap him anytime she felt like it if she wanted to. And I don't know how much they get away with each other, because I don't know them personally. But I get a kick out of him a little. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but the more I learned about it, the more I liked their grit. Because then I seen this thing come out, and here's John in a confrontation, and the other guy's losing it. Just completely lost his mind. Called him names and insulted him. It didn't bother him in the least. That guy was almost jumping up and down, grabbing his junk. And it was, the confrontation, as nasty as it was, it almost made you laugh. So, and this other guy he's always worried about somebody's butt or their crown jewels or whatever, their family jewels and their junk and all that. He always has to make some sort of a reference, which to me is kid stuff, something in 6th grade or something, but not everyday life. Lord knows. Golly. And then here's this little girl. At the time, through most of this, she was 3 to 4 years old. And she just now turned 5 here within the last month. And she can look out and see this. And, she would question why people are so mad, why they can't go to the post office, why can't they walk through the store, why did they hurry out of Walmart? Why are they always looking up and down the road so that they can get out and go somewhere? The only father she knows is John. John, as far as she's concerned, that's her dad. And other people would say, well, he's not your dad, but he does all the duties of a father. And her mother, she's never known anybody, other than her as her mother. And people are calling them names, flipping them off as they go by in their vehicle. People that follow the neighbor, follow everything that he says, and they take it as gospel. In fact, at one time he actually preached the gospel. Hard to believe, isn't it? As this year progressed, and I looked at that, and I said, well, Ray, you were wrong in how you assess this. You looked at it from the outside, and all you seen was the noise. But you didn't know what the lifestyle really was. And I looked there, and I said, well, I grew up poorer than that. We didn't have the facilities. We didn't have that much ground. And they're doing everything wrong, and yet they had much more than I ever had when I was a kid. And everybody's looking at them as that's the worst place you could raise a young girl. And they kept saying there's no sanitation. Absolutely, there was a sanitation. It's a septic system. It's certified. It was licensed contractors putting it in. The state of Florida says it's good. People to this day are saying it's not. They must know more than the state does. These people live through all these inspections. You know, the Department of Natural Resources, or whatever it is, that came through there and inspected and wrote them some, not citations, but warnings, okay? And they fixed it for their sanctuary. They have a turtle sanctuary. Everybody has knocked that from day one because they know more than what those people do. And in fact, Michelle, her time goes back quite a ways when you look into her background about wildlife and what she's done working within that group, not in just one state, but other states as well. This little girl, from the time she was born, has never, ever known another mother other than Michelle, period. It had been pre-planned before she was born and carried through. And she was born with a devastating problem. So it was a 24/7 care by somebody who could really care. And that person with that grit that's able to fight back against the system was Michelle. She did that. She had the grit. And you can knock her background all you want, but it prepared her, I think, the Lord was preparing her for this time to raise this special girl. And the girl is special. And everybody got to see it this Christmas. But a year ago, this last Christmas here, she wasn't allowed to attend something. Every other person around there, around the county, was able to, and the doors were open, but they were not open to her parents. And her parents were not going to relinquish her to somebody to walk through a crowd out there, because they had been threatened over and over and over somebody was going to come in there and take that daughter. And in fact, somebody, a rapper, had a song made up where the angel of death was going to come in there and pay her a visit and broadcast it out there for the world to see. Now, somebody talked him into taking it down, but not before it was copied. There's multiple copies out there today. This same person, people in that town don't realize it, but they got their arms around this son of a gun. Be careful. His true colors were shown quite some time ago. You might not have got to see it, but some people heard it. Bad news. But you know something? I'm going to end up this story with the good things that came out of this whole thing. And if you stuck with me this long, I'm so happy for you. Because now I'm going to tell you the rest of the story for this year and hope that it catches on. People with big hearts in a small channel, very small channel, decided to get together and say, hey, we have these people out here that need a voice. And they gave them that voice. And then they said, well, these people that came to them, they need some help. The people didn't come to them, but they went to the people and said, we can see you need something. Can we be of assistance to you? And a friendship began and grew. And the people that wanted to help grew. And the channels started coming together. Because they were watching. And they wanted to be part of helping the growth of this person. Not on the attack if somebody was attacking them. They wanted to be part of the growth to help this girl. And this family, as they got to know the family and started walking in their shoes, they realized the reason they could survive is because they were tough. They fought back with everything they had. And it all come together when a channel come along and said, we would love to do something positive. And they did. They talked to people like you out there that are listening today. And they said, if you want to help, we need a fence. Because these people are being berated because they don't have a fence. People are driving by here, they're telling us that the property stinks. We don't think so, but people out there do. And they don't want to look at all the disarray in that property. This was a former dump. Pretty well cleaned up now. And it was before all this rhetoric started, it was cleaned up. And then they said, well, that's a cheap fence, it won't hold up. First storm comes along, it'll be gone. Oh boy, there was sure a lot of help, wasn't there? Well, the people that knocked it were from the other side. Not the town itself, just people that were following this other neighbor. You see, both of them come from out of town and moved there. Wow. As I looked at this thing unfold, and I'm thinking, holy mackerel. It's really coming together. And the day that fence went up, I knew they could start to breathe a little bit and start to enjoy their property. For the first time in years, they could sit behind that fence. Although, let me tell you, this guy goes along on a regular basis with a camera lifted up over the top of that fence. Taking pictures because he wants to catch him doing something wrong, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is he's peeping this camera over the top of the fence. He's a peeper. I mean, I don't know what else I can say about it. There's an obsession going on, and supposedly by taking pictures over the fence, somehow it protects this guy, this big, strapping guy. This guy that likes to sue people that are and go after people my age. He's taking pictures of this property after he was one of the biggest complainers about it. Matter of fact, he has property across from there, and they have cameras all over the place to watch him. And he claims that they're stalking him, and he's still taking pictures every day. Well, I could go on and on with the stories. But the good part is, it's not just the fence that's being built. It is the friends that became a part of the story that came together to make it happen. And this little girl was able to enjoy a Christmas beyond the dreams of any 5-year-old. And it showed how caring this little girl is because she was willing to share with others. This little girl is being brought up. She doesn't swear. She has a good vocabulary. She's very smart. She figures things out. She's every parent's dream is this little girl that these two people have raised from infancy, from a baby, that planned on her before she was ever born and brought her to the state. She is now 5 years old and as happy as you can be. That's the happy part of this whole story that I'm telling you about. Now, just because there's a fence up there doesn't mean that it's over for them. It absolutely does not. Like I say, I'm trying to tell the rest of the story. I'm telling you how this year turned out. This happy part of it is that. There's also people got together to put a house together for them. They have the shell up. It's called a bardominium. They're made to make a house out of. The slab is there, the doors are there, the windows there. It's all installed. And now they need to go inside and finish up wiring, plumbing, studs, finishing, stuff like that. And it's going to be a possibility. So what started out as almost total devastation now has got to the point where this family unit can take a breath of fresh air and look out of what they've accomplished in this last year, going from literal hell into their own private heaven in their backyard. In the middle of a swamp out there, okay? It's only a town of 100. They have a high water table. Now, I'm not talking about a swamp that's, where you see all these cypress trees growing and, that part. The living area is dry ground around there, okay? But they have a lot around them in the area. That's a lot of water, high water table. And Otter Creek was renamed by those that are opposing this thing. They call it Otter Creek with 2 D's instead of 2 T's. So you can tell the difference in which way they're bending by how they call this town. I don't know what the townspeople think of it, but I know that the townspeople were helping put the fence up. And they were sharing meals with each other at that place. So, for all of you out there, I hope this all continues. Because Otter Creek, I congratulate you. There were so many people in Otter Creek with big hearts. And that didn't walk astray because of outside influence. That you've kept your hometown values of helping a neighbor out that needs help. And to Michelle and John and Harley, I wish you the best in this coming year. And I know it's going to be better because I know that by the end of next year, good Lord willing, you're going to be looking at a beautiful home with all the amenities that are needed to live a normal life. Not that you don't have them now, because I know you have a travel trailer that has everything that's needed. It's got heat and air conditioning, it's got water service in, and it's hooked to the sewer system. I know that. So I'm not taking anything away from you there. And I know before this started, you already had friends there in Otter Creek. That they were there for you this whole time. Before anybody else got involved, they were still there for you. And now, more people that have gotten around you, you have more people that you can call friends. And you guys did it because of your persistence. Michelle and John, you have something the other guy doesn't have, and it's called grit. It's something that's born in here. And it's an honest grit that keeps you going no matter what the obstacles are. You've faced obstacles that are terrible, 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 shouldn't never have come down on you. But now that you've got this step up, and you can smile and hold your head up with no problems, I congratulate you for getting through that whole thing, for gleaning and making sure that these friends are still going to be your friends through this next year as well, and that it will grow rather than shrink, because I think it will grow. My hat's off to you. I want to tell you something. You survived something I don't know if I could have. And I couldn't have done it unless, I'm afraid that it would have got very violent if things came down on me like they did with you. And you were able to hold back, and just persistence and a belief in the Lord and in friends, you were able to get it accomplished, what was needed. May God bless you in the rest of your days. I've been blessed just being able to watch this scenario happen. I'm so happy it did. So, big smile and congratulations. You made my year. You made Christmas for me. And this little thing here that I did today, it's a long one. It's almost an hour long. There's going to be a lot of people who hate my channel for it. And so be it. It's all worth it, Michelle and John and Harley. You earned my gratitude for just being there doing this thing. Because, mankind has slipped a lot. And I told you about how I felt about how the world things are going on. And I promised everybody, I said when I ended this up, it was going to be on a good note. And you are the good note for the year for me. When I looked out at the world problems, at the governmental problems that are here in our own country, this country I'm so proud to be a member of, citizen of. But you were the bright light this year in my life, showing me how you could do it, and you did do it. And I hope this next year is as big an improvement as this year was for you. My belief in mankind in this country has been renewed with your efforts out there. So with that, I want to thank you. And I hope you come back and watch my channel from time to time. I know you're going to be busy for the next year, and you got a lot of things to do. And I know your heart is full of happiness and gratefulness for everybody that came to your aid. But I don't think you realize the influence you had on all of us out here. So thank you very much for being you. And hey, John, ta-ta.